It's Friday. It's Friday. Cake. Happy New Year.
It's my cake.
It's Friday. It's episode 120. It's Chocy Chat.
It's my cake.
I've got a cake.
It's my cake.
It's my cake. Technically, it's my cake.
No, it's my cake.
Okay, it's our cake.
No, you said it's your cake, not my cake.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Chocy Chat crew. So, I've got a cake. It's my cake. It's all my cake. It's my cake. So, I like cake. I like cake. I like Ribena. So, how's everybody doing? Hello, Chocy Chat crew. Happy New Year. We're episode 120. It's the 5th of January. We're going to do some... we're going to talk about airbrushes tonight. Changing needles. So, you'll probably want to play this one back. No, it's my cake.
Well, no, now it's my cake.
Fight me for it. What are we going to do tonight? So we're going to talk about airbrushes. We're going to talk about airbrushes and changing the needles because it seems some people have some problems with that. Also, I sent a post earlier in the week by a lovely lady just who felt, what's the word? How do I want to describe this? Felt a little bit dejected and kind of negative feedback and emails and just found things a little bit overwhelming. So me being the voice of reason, I was just going to talk about that briefly in terms of what I do or what we do as a business, and then when I talk to other businesses, how they deal with the kind of negativity online and the other kind of bits and pieces. We're going to dwell on it too much because we like positive, right? But anyway, here we are, it's Friday already, and it seems like 2 minutes since we were here last. So I can see Billy's got his chocolates. Billy, they were nice chocolates today, really, really nice. Nancy Life, Australia, I think that is. Mother Baker, hi Mo. Mo, thanks for the gift, absolutely amazing. Ron's Bonbons. Ron, how are you feeling? Are you feeling, Ron's Bonbon? Ron's being a bit poorly, he's being a poorly boy. So, Durate Bakes, lovely post from you during the week. Emma's there at ES Chocolates down in Sydney. Andrew there's Styling Chocolates. Mariba's there, hi Mariba down in New Zealand. Chocolate by Neander, how are you? Paula's joined us. How's everybody doing? Happy New Year. Stephanie Porter there, Forester Chocolates. I see I have to remember everybody's name and where they are and who they are. And just really difficult is for everybody that ordered during the sale, absolutely amazing, thank you. People don't always order with the email of what their business is, right? So I send all these bits and pieces out and then I see them post and I'm like, God, I don't remember sending that to them. I didn't see that name. And then you kind of have to put two and two together and you're like, oh, that's who they are. So that's I have to sit here on Friday night and try and remember everybody's name. Rochelle's there, Amazing Grazing. We've got Ned there at N2 Sweet Lab. If you haven't seen Ned's work, patisserie and chocolates, absolutely mesmerising, absolutely amazing stuff. Emma, Happy New Year. Yeah, you had New Year half a day before us, so Vitamin P Chocolates, how are you? That's Pedro. Novia Chocolateria, how are you? We're all good here. Can't get those airbrushes till March. I bought a lot of them. It's because I bought them. I give these out. These anybody that does a hands-on class, they get one of these, and we change the needle and do all that stuff while they're here, so that I know that they go home with an airbrush that works, as opposed to me saying you should buy this one, and then they get home and then go, how do I change the needle? So that was a solution to a problem. Evelyn there, Chocolate Idyllic, I think he's on Jersey, or Guernsey, no, he's on Jersey. The brownies are for the girls, but the cake is for James. Don't think the girls like Dundee cake. Rania, did you hear this? Mo, let me just read this out, and everybody else can confirm it's here. The brownies are for the girls, that's you, okay? And the cake is for James. It's here, look, that's what Mo wrote.
I doubt it.
Look, that honesty is the best one.
With cake, I can't trust you.
Nobody can trust me with cake. If I have one weakness, it's cake. Happy Chrissy saying Happy New Year. Who else? I'm just going to say some hellos out. Miss Tips Caramel. Yeah, Happy New Year to everybody. Yeah, it's been a while. Kelly there, Kelly Russell Chocolates. Sean Rennie's joined us. Hi, Sean. Sean, are you down in New Orleans or where are you now? I think you're dotted all over. Chef John Maltby, how are you, mate? Joe saying, thanks for advising me with the melange. It's already arrived today. Can't wait to try it. Good bit of kit. It's a good bit of kit. It's nice for making the tilting one that I use, that I recommend. I've had that a few years now, and I've never had any issues. I'm more than capable of dealing with the volumes I have. So, Erin there in Portland, I think. So, Land of Green Ginger, thanks for the cocoa butter, amazing. Nick, you're welcome. Thank you for everybody that ordered as well. New Year's Day sale. That was a bit. I'm still topping up. Yeah, that went a bit crazy. It was Mrs. So Sassy's birthday on the 1st. We were still in here at 1:45 putting stuff together on New Year's Eve, right? And I think today is the last day that I was still topping up madly. So, Temptation Chocolates. Hello, she sent some hellos out. So, oh, Sean, you're in Tennessee, but you're going back home soon. Happy days. Jason there, JC Chocolates. Right, shall I just explain what I was going to do? There's a couple of things I wanted to talk about tonight. One was the airbrush thing. Changing needles, all right? So this is the little brush that this is the brush that I recommend. It's a Fender. It's the FE 183K. It comes with 3 needles. Cheap little brush. Don't need an expensive brush. You need a good compressor. Put your money into the compressor, not into buying an expensive brush. Give me an amazing compressor and a cheap brush, I can do anything. Give me an amazing expensive brush and a cheap compressor, and I can't do a thing, right? So it's all about the air, and this is only the vehicle to direct where the spray is going. The compressor will control the pressure and everything else, right? So put your money into the compressor, not into expensive brushes. And these are cheap. In UK pounds, I think they're only about £26. So you can get 3 or 4 of these and have one spare for spare parts and nothing. When you get these, they come with 3 needles. The 0.5 is already in the kit, all right? But I recommend you use a 0.8. There's 3 needles in there, a 0.3, a 0.5, and 0.8. The 0.3, don't, I mean, if you want to try airbrushing with that, you can. If you've got 4 days free to spray one mould, then yeah, use the 0.3. I don't recommend that. You can use a 0.5 once you get a bit more practice. And you're much happier in setting the flow rates and the controls and pressures and doing real fine detail. But you need to change them over. So within the kit, you get the needles, right? So what you would need is your brush, okay? You'd need the 0.8 needle. So, and it will tell you on the label there, it'll say 0.8, okay? And then also you get this little vial. And in there are 2 bits that you really, really do need, okay? One piece that looks like a little bullet, okay? So that's the needle cover, okay? So that centers the needle, and that'll be a 0.8, okay? And then you'll get, there's 3 parts on the front of this brush. The other thing, so in that little vial that you get is this little bullet, okay? And then also, this is the nozzle cover. Okay, so that's a nozzle cover. When you get the brush, it's got the 0.5 in it. So to change it over, it's really, really straightforward, all right? On the front of the brush there's 3 parts, okay? There's 3 screws. The first one, take that one off. I've loosened these, all right? First one is an air cap. So you can see the end of the brush and you can see the needle. Oh, let's put that somewhere dark. Yeah, you can see the needle on the end there. Okay, so that's just the air cap. Okay, so that one will come off. The next one that comes off is the part that was in here. Okay, so that one will screw off. Okay, so that's the nozzle cover. All right, that's the nozzle cover. So we'll put that one aside. Okay, so over here I've got what was in this little vial. Okay, the next bit you'll need the little spanner for. There is a little spanner that goes in it. I find that if I have the brush facing to my left, okay, if I put the little spanner on and tilt upwards, okay, that will loosen off. Once that loosens off, what we will do is we'll take the back cover off, okay, we'll undo this little thumb screw and we're just going to pull the needle out 2 centimeters, half an inch or so. That'll take the needle out the front there. This bit just comes out. then the new bullet that was in this little vial, that one will go back on, okay, followed by the needle housing, so that one will screw back on, going towards you. Once you get to that bit, okay, what we'll do is put the needle back in. The reason we do that is, if I take this needle out all the way, the trigger will lift out. If I just press down on it and take the trigger out a tiny bit, take the needle out a tiny bit, what I'll be able to do is remove that needle cover and the needle housing, okay, without taking the needle all the way out, because when you drop this trigger out, it is an absolute nightmare to get back in. So that little bullet will go back on, the needle housing will go back on, okay, so that will just center the needle right through the middle of it, okay, that one will go back on. And then in that little vial was the little bullet and also that nozzle cover. That nozzle cover goes back on. So that's the two parts gone back on. Those need to go on really, really, really tight, okay? The spanner will tighten up the first one, right? So that's the needle housing. So that will tighten that one really, really tight. And the next one needs to be really, really thumb tight. All that will go back on now is that air cap, okay? But what we'll do is we'll put the needle back in. So we'll push the needle back in so we can see it. There's butter in there because I warmed the brush. The needle will go back in. We're going to push the needle back in so it just is, it's kind of, I'm not forcing it in, it's just in until it just about sticks, okay? And then we'll tighten that one up. And then we'll put the air cap back on the front, okay? I'll do this again in reverse, all right? So we'll put the needle cap back on the front, okay? And then we'll put that cutaway back on the back. And then we're ready to go. What you should be able to do is take that front first one off. So that's an air cap. You can spray without that one on. What it will do is that will just center the arc of the flow, all right? So they spray as a cone, okay? So it goes from a cone and it goes out, all right? So it starts off small and it sprays outwards, okay? If you want to mist something, take that air cap off. You can spray with it on or off, totally up to you. I prefer to leave it on simply because these are front heavy. So when you drop them, you always end up bending the needle, and if you bend the needle, when you pull the trigger, the needle won't move, and then you end up with problems. So, but if I was misting something, say I put luster dust in, and I just wanted to set it with some cocoa butter over the back. So, you know, if I put in something like red chrome as an example, if I sprayed, if I painted red chrome, or put red chrome in there, and I just wanted to set it because I wanted to do scrape some lines or something through it, I'd take the air cap off and just spray over the top like that, and it'll give me a much wider footprint of spray compared to having that air cap on. So the air cap goes on. Here's another couple of little tricks, all right? Not the first one, not the air cap, but that second one, if that is just half a turn undone, when you press down for air, the air goes in and then it will go straight back out, and it ends up coming out through here. Comes out through this bit. So if that's remotely done, and they do come undone, I don't know how. There's little gremlins that break into your workshop in the middle of the night. So little gremlins come in and fiddle with stuff. I mean, they get loosened, all right? If that's just, not the first one, but the second one, okay? If that's just remotely loose, okay, when you press down for the air comes up the hose, goes into here, mixes in this little reservoir chamber here. If it gets to there, if there's a tiniest little gap, it just goes straight back up the brush, and you end up with paint all in your trigger, and then it will come out through the spring loader at the back here. So you want to make sure that's tight. If you do take the air cap off the front, okay, just make sure that one's done up tight, really, really tight, okay. Very often, if you've got air coming through, and I go into depth in this on the airbrush class, right? If you press down and you pull the trigger and you've got air, okay, if the air's coming through, cocoa butter will come through. If cocoa butter isn't coming through, okay, I mean, if you haven't got air coming through, that's probably your compressor or your hose. So change hoses and see what the blockage is on the compressor side. But if you press down for air and you get air, then cocoa butter will come through. The only thing it's really going to be is, like I said, not that front cap, okay, it's the second one. If that one's even half undone, instead of the air coming out this way, it will just revert back up the through the chamber, and it'll come up back through the brush. The other one is, if this second one here is loose, all the air will just come straight up the cup, all right, and you'll hear bubbling. And very often that's just a blockage, right? So I'll go into that a bit more depth with the airbrush class, but going back on that again, so changing the needle, okay, in the little vial that you get with the brush, so the brush is preloaded with a 0.5. What you would do is take off, not the first one, you take off the second one, okay, take off the second one, and that's going to be in the next one. That one will match up with the needle that's in the kit, so you want to keep those two separate. That one has come off, okay, so just unscrew that one there. We would undo this front, where's my spanner? We'd undo this front one, so like I said, if you have this facing to your left, okay, and then attach a little spanner or wrench, whatever you want to call it, and if you go upwards, it will loosen it, okay. Take that one off. We're going to leave the needle in at the moment. I'm not going to change the needle, okay. So that one will come off. Once that's off, then we're just going to loosen the needle. We're going to take it back 1/2 inch, 2 centimeters, okay. That just means that the trigger won't drop out. This little bullet that's on the front will come off. We'll take that little bullet from the little vial, we'll put that back on, okay. So that'll just sit snug. We'll put that needle housing back on, so it'll screw towards you. Then you change the needle, okay. And what that means is you press down on the trigger, okay. You undo the little thumb screw. You take the needle all the way out. Keep your finger on the trigger. You swap to your 0.8 needle, okay. Your needle will go back on, okay. You're going to press that all the way in until you just see it snugly stick here, and then tighten that up, then let go of the trigger. If the trigger drops out, you'll fiddle around for 10 minutes trying to get the trigger back in, because it's a tiny little brass lug and you've got to line it up exactly and press down. So the idea is that the needle just stops that falling out. Putting your finger on the trigger and not taking the needle all the way out until you change those bars. And then you get the new nozzle cover, which is in that little vial. That one screws back on, because that bit matches up with the 0.8 needle, okay, which also matches up with the little bullet that's in there, right? It's a little needle housing, and once that's there, then you can put the needle, the air cap back on the front. All right, so I hope that's explained everybody for you, but you can play that one back and then you'll know what's going on. Make sure everything's done up tight, right? Especially this one here with the little spanner. If you do get one of those, different brushes have slightly different designs. Some of them you need a key lock to go in the back, and they're really fiddly, and I don't like them. I like Harden Steinbeck brushes. I like them when I'm doing kind of the art, spraying inks, but for cocoa butter, 0.8 needle's good. If you're a beginner, 0.8 needle's good. A lot of my brushes, where they've got the limiter on the back there, if the limiter's on the back, it tells me the brush is a 0.5. If there is no limiter on there, okay, it tells me it's a 0.8. And I would limit, I wouldn't limit down a 0.8, I'd just go and spray, whereas the 0.5 I can have a little bit more control, open it up, or make it really, really fine. So I hope that's answered it for everybody. They're good little brushes, not a huge amount to go wrong. If you've got air coming through, so you press the trigger and you've got air coming through, if air's coming through, cocoa butter will come through. It's going to be one of the screws on the front, or it'll be a blockage when you clean this bit out. On the point of cleaning, I hear all sorts of things like put hot water down it and spray. Don't put water in it. The inner working parts are steel, and they'll go rusty and they'll corrode. And once they corrode, let's throw the brush out and buy a new one. What's pedagogic mean? I have no idea, Chrissy. Where was I? Yeah, don't put water through it. I mean, if you need to, if it's really bad and you only had the one brush, I'd spray a little bit of cocoa butter through it. But 2 grams of cocoa butter is getting on for kind of 30 pence. you do that too often, suddenly the price is going up in your chocolates, because you need to factor that in. I think you just need to spray out the excess, give it a really good wipe, get the next colour in, and that will force the next colour through, right? So there's a lot more details in the airbrush class and how I do that efficiently and changing colours and all those kind of bits and pieces. I really just wanted to explain. So many people change the needle and forget to change this bit, okay? And it's this little needle cover on the front. They forget to change that over. You need to change all three parts: the little bullet, the needle cover, and the needle. If you're missing any of those, do you know, if you not put 0.5 needle in the housing that's a 0.8, when you press spray, it's just going to go everywhere, and then vice versa. If you've got the wrong needle cap in there, but a 0.8 needle, it's still going to behave like it's a 0.5 when you press the trigger, right? So. What about hot regular oil? No, don't put oil through it, because you can't mix oil with cocoa butter. So if oil gets on the cocoa butter, you're going to have cocoa butter that doesn't temper, or it won't dry. So don't put water through them. Put them in, if you've got a dehydrator, put them in there, warm them all up. You can give them a good shake out, give them a good dry out. They're not designed to be constantly taken apart. All you're going to do is thread them. They are not designed to constantly be taken apart. I know people put them in, somebody said they put them in, what's the electronic baths? Can't remember the name of them now. Like an ultrasonic bath, and don't get water near them because they'll go rusty, or certainly the steel that's in there will kind of it will go bad. They're just not designed. Yes, give them a good wipe out. If you need to, spray a little bit of cocoa butter. Don't put oil through it. There's a little reservoir. There's a little reservoir right in here, okay, and there's a little void at the back. So when you put a new colour in, some of it remains in there. The problem with putting oil in is you can't get rid of it, because oil doesn't, you know, evaporate. It's always going to be there. Once oil gets in there, if it starts getting towards the working parts at the back where the springs and cogs are, you're going to end up with like big problems. I think the class that I've got, the online video, I think that explains, you know, how to change your colours is a really, really quick process. It's really not difficult at all once you understand what the brush is doing and the way it pushes the cocoa butter through. You should be able to empty out what you've got, give it a really good kind of wipe out, put your next colour in and spray out the excess, right? Where you'll end up with a little bit of both, and then it will all be the right colour. So, right, have I? I've got to go back and find all the questions now. Let me just go back. 1 second. Right. Happy days, right. Okay, so Paula's saying, yeah, done that before. Drop the trigger. Yeah, don't let go of the trigger. You take the needle out, don't let go of the trigger, and then it's all lined up, and you no major issues. All right. So, sentence enhancing. Happy days. If I didn't say hello, welcome tonight. How do I fix it from screaming at me? I'm not sure I understand. Shouldn't be making any noise. They hiss, but they're not that noisy. So that'll be the air. That'll be a, you know. I mean, I've had air hoses split, and they're a little bit noisy. It sounds like somebody's sitting on a whoopee cushion. But you know what? Change hoses. Sometimes colour separation from chocolate in moulds. Why different in degrees? Fluffy candy, that'll be a tempering issue. The moulds need to be kind of 16, 17, 18 degrees. Not too cold. They're too cold. When the cocoa butter hits the mould, it just sets too fast. So we want it to crystallise. We want it to crystallise slowly, so that all those little molecules join up flat, not with gaps in them, because that's where it looks dull, because it sets too quickly. What about hot regular oil? Already answered that. Durate bakes. Don't put oil down it. No need at all. Can you tell which caps are which once out of the pots? No. No, you can't. What I do is, and I haven't done it on this one, is when I swap them over, I'll get a little label and I'll write, the one that's going back into there would be the 0.5. So I don't use the 0.3 ever. And if I know I've changed a brush over and I'm using it, I'll have put them all in a 0.5, or I will know which brush is a 0.5 when I go into their 0.5s in there. That's 2 0.5s in there at the minute because they've got the back on them. I mean, you can put a sticker on. The problem is that the cocoa butter, anything with adhesive, the cocoa butter just dilutes it. So any stickers you put on the brush just kind of comes off. So just remembering which ones you've got, right? How do you clean your moulds once you've sprayed? I find when I wipe, the excess goes back into the mould. If it's not clean, it colours the white chocolate. It depends on the cloth, right? I use those. I try and catch it while it's still slightly wet when I spray. Give me an option. Give me a mould. I'm trying to catch it while it's still quite wet, and I give it a really good clean, and then on the sides as well. If I need to, I'll just give that a very quick warm with a hairdryer if it has dried off, and I'll give it a really good. It tends to happen when I'm using white more than anything. Any colour going back into the chocolate though, I mean, even with white chocolate, it should only be a tiny amount, so it would blend back in anyway, I would have thought. So, silk question: is there a fast way to make them? In Easy Temper had one time left the lid slightly open, the next day everything had melted. Leave the lid open, it doesn't melt. I tell you what, there's a blue. So with the Easy Temper, so I'll tilt it forward. There's if you knock the blue one off here, that's the on button, but that's the little fan. If you turn the fan off, the whole lot will just turn to liquid overnight. No, there isn't a fast way of doing it. Because it's not being agitated to make the silk. It's purely time and temperature. There's not a fast way to do it. There isn't. I know what you mean. When I had a Kadzama, I've got a Kadzama, and I occasionally knock the button off on that. And I had a big order to do recently, or it was last year sometime, and it was like 2,500 bonbons. And I came down in the morning going, right, all ready to go. Chocolate's melted. Looked at the Kadzama, it was off. There's no way I was going to hand temper kind of 15 kilos of chocolate. It just kind of wasn't going to happen. So phoned and said, yeah, we're going to be a day behind. There's no fast way to make silk. If you try and make it too fast, you end up melting the beta crystals in there, which is what you're trying to preserve when you make it. So never frozen my chocolates before, always had short life in restaurants. Is there anything that doesn't freeze well other than fluid gels? No, fluid gels freeze nicely. No reason to freeze caramels, no reason to freeze Yandujas or pralines, because they've got a long shelf life in it anyway. I suppose if you wanted to freeze them so that when you take everything out, you're kind of starting with the same date shelf life, depending on your shortest. It would be a ganache, wouldn't it? But no, they will all freeze. I mean, once we bind up the water, the amount of water that's left in there is 1 or 2%. It's not a huge amount. So, and it'd be well dispersed if it's emulsified. So, very small droplets of water that's unbound. So, there's no real reason to freeze caramels. It doesn't. I mean, the sugar content that's in there, caramel doesn't freeze anyway. If anybody's ever tried to make caramel ice cream and you put real caramel into the cream to try and churn it, nothing happens. It's like trying to freeze alcohol. Sugars don't freeze, right? So there's no point in freezing caramels. Ganache is the only thing I'd really freeze. Pâte de frites and fluid gels, they freeze okay, then no issues. Do you all of your chats get loaded up to you? No, they don't. I started doing that. It's a long-winded process because it means I've got to find the channel, download it, which takes ages with one of the readers, and then upload it every night. A lot of work for me. But they're all of the chats are here on the Instagram channel, so you can watch them. You can play catch up. They're all on there, all 120 of them. So, well, no, 119. 120 will be tonight. Can you freeze bonbons with the ganache and caramels? Won't the caramel bonbons expand and crack the shells? No, caramels don't expand at all because of the fat content in them. I've never had fillings expand and freeze. Never happened to me. So Hashim there in Bahrain, I think. Walaikum salam. But yeah, you can. Oh yeah, all the catch-ups you can. They're all on the channel there. You have to go back 2 years something. But yeah, they're all on there. Some people have watched all of them, I think. Somebody went all the way at the beginning and had a look. So who else got any questions? I got sent something earlier in the week about. So this is Chloe, the Chocolation. She did a post saying she's just generally fed up with emails, negative emails. I did have a little chat with her briefly. And how do I deal with it? And how do I do it? And we get absolutely bombarded. Rania deals with it more than I do. For me, it tends to be the kind of Instagram and the messages. Some days the messages can reach hundreds, okay? And and they're in lots of different formats. I think the challenge we've got with social media is, and for me, for my business, is I'm the face of my business. So whilst I sit here on Friday night and answer questions, and I do get round and answer things, and we've got the Chocy Chat page on Facebook, which I try and keep up to date with what's going on there. You kind of put yourself out there, and there are times you get really, really bombarded. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed by it. Sometimes there are so many messages, I just can't keep up, and it's. You take a couple of days off and I can kind of, if I don't look at my phone, and I've got into a better habit of kind of putting my phone down and leaving it after 7 o'clock at night. But in terms of how do you deal with it, I will get to the messages, and the messages are split into very different categories. I mean, most recently, and generally they're always positive, right? Generally they're always really, really nice. We do get the odd occasional nasty one, including the odd nasty email. It always centers around, where's my cocoa butter? Why haven't you posted it? Why hasn't it arrived yet? We can only answer it in honesty and look at the tracking, which they have, and then answer it that way. It's a difficult one. I think in business, you just gotta, when you've got a product that's personal to you, and I make these, right? So if they don't work, it's me, okay? And we test everything. I've got all the stuff that's for testing. We keep everything I make. I've got a sample of everything, right? Because that's the rules that we need to work by. Okay, so I can track back all the way at the beginning and get a sample of a product, right? So, for instance, somebody said recently, the pink's not as pink as I thought it was. It's not as pink as the last one. And I can go back to the original mix and say, it's fine, and here's the classification of it, and here's the ingredients of it, and this is what I use, that's what I didn't use. So it's evidence for me. I think you have to grow quite thick skin in the business. The feedback sometimes it's in kind of two formats, and I try to speak to Chloe about this, that when it's your own personal product, you end up taking it really personally. And I think you just need to kind of grow thick skin. There are always going to be complainers. If you think you're going to make 100% of people happy, you're absolutely wrong. It's not going to happen. My aim is to make sure that everybody is happy, and I will solve things as they come along. But I can only do so much. If what I offer still isn't good enough, well, there's nothing more I can do. Some people get out of bed in the morning and just say, right, I'm going to have a bad day, and I'm going to make everybody else's life around me bad, or miserable because I'm miserable. Stay away from those people. They're not good people. I think it's having thicker skin and not taking things too personally. I mean, I don't use WhatsApp. I don't answer it. I don't look at it. There are hundreds of messages there. I don't use it because for some reason the users of WhatsApp seem to think it's okay to message at 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Regardless of the time frame where they live, they seem to think it's just available 24 hours a day. Instagram, you can't call me on Instagram phone because that started happening, and it was calls at 2, 1, 2, 3, and it was, I get sent a video of my airbrush don't work. Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm asleep. So I'm not available 24 hours a day. If you're if you're getting bombarded like that, it's kind of just part and parcel of the job now. And I think businesses, you know, you can field out some of your social media, but you still need to answer some of your customer comments. You need to follow up on sales leads. You can't ignore it, but I you know, there are some that come through. You have no idea how many times I get this, send me some samples and I'll do a big order, right? Or send me some butters and I'll give you a shout out. The amount of chocolatiers that do that to me is absolutely infuriating. Because I could go back to them and say, do you know, send me £300 of free cakes and I'll give you a shout out, right? It just doesn't work like that. So I don't know where people kind of have the balls to do that, but they do, and that's infuriating. But I can spot those ones straight away now, and they're deleted before I even get to read them, right? So, which I think's fair. That's me, right? It's a challenge. It is a challenge. I think, you know, Chloe, she's like, oh, I feel like giving up. And I said, don't. It's just, you know, take a deep breath, go and have a cup of tea, go and chill out. It's not personal. Sometimes people write things and send it before they think. And I certainly, like with emails, I've always thought that you should write it and then read it twice before you send it if you're replying to something. So, it comes with a challenge. I think with social media, when you put yourself out there, and I know we get absolutely annihilated with emails. There are so many emails that come through. It's absolutely endless. Rania, bless her, deals with a lot of it. Why don't you ship to my country? Where's my order? Where's this? Send me a sample of this. If I order 2 butters, can you send me a 3rd one free? It's just absolutely non-stop. And we try and answer all of them. But the backlog when we came back from holiday was just like, we sat at dinner tonight and we said our holiday in the 3rd week of December feels like it was 3 months ago. We have not stopped since we got back. So, but that's business, right? The flip side is, you know, we're really, really busy, and that's the deal, right? If it wasn't busy, it would be a different problem. So you know, you got to accept it as it comes. I think if you're getting negative feedback, you know, if you're getting no feedback at all, you kind of haven't got honest enough people around you. But I do think, like, all feedback is good, negative or positive, right? You've just got to, it's how you compute that in your brain, and whether you take that on personally or whether you've kind of learned to just kind of brush it off a little bit. And I think the further you get into the business and the more successful you get, the better you are at dealing with, is it a complaint, a criticism, right? So it's the 3 C's. Is it a compliment, a complaint, or a criticism? I get emails and messages that say, you know, the one that was this week. So we swapped over, we didn't swap over. The bottle tops, where are we? We get these in boxes of 10,000, okay? So, and there's a lead time on it, and the lead time, because of Christmas, so I ended up having to get some black ones. The first email I got, which I knew was coming, because every time this person does an order, I get this flow of all the issues. There was a rip in the box, the postman left it on the doorstep. I see that you've got black lids now. Is that going to be the normal thing going forward? I see that labels are bigger now. Is that something you're going to do? And it's kind of like, in scope of things, it really, really doesn't matter. Once I get the white tots back tomorrow, I'll swap them all over. But reading those kind of emails, it's just like, it's draining. It really, really is draining. It's got to be done. It's just part of business, right? So Evelyn's saying, oh my God, I just found out I've been using a 0.5 and got a brand new 0.8. Okay, like it, yeah. Change it over to a 0.8, it's a lot easier, right? Especially if you're 0.8 needles, if you're spraying type B, so if you're spraying the type B butters, you will need a 0.8. It will go through a 0.5, but it'll be a little bit stuttery. And what I mean is, you'll spray and it will stop, and you'll have to keep doing that, okay? To force a bit more pressure through it. When you get a pressure lag, which means the pressure in your compressor is its lowest, you'll find it starts to stutter. So take your hand off, let the pressure come back on and go back through again. But what happens is you get all this excess build up here. It's called tip dry, or we call it tip dry, right? And it's where you pull back on the trigger and you keep letting go like that. That's not healthy. We press down, we pull back, and then we push forward and let go, right? So air on to press down, we come back and push forward, so it's that action, right? not back and let go. If you keep springing it like that, you'll get all this excess build up here, and eventually when you go to spray a nice smooth platen, you'll get splatter everywhere, or worse, the little aperture on the front here, it all dries up, which is why we call it tip dry, and that little aperture gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it blocks. Okay, and when it blocks, what happens is it ends up bubbling up through the cup, or worse, it goes all the way back through here, and while you're spraying, you suddenly discover you've got paint all over your fingers. And it all comes from doing that, letting go. Try not to do that, right? Try not to do that. Press down, we come back, and then we go forward. Okay? Little things, right? Little tips. It all helps. Chocolate creams, how are you? When you make the caramels ahead of time and put them in the fridge, do you add the chocolate when you retemperature? No, I don't. I make caramel ganache. We put it in the Ziplocs or vac pack bags and we freeze it up. We'll warm it to 40, 45 degrees, re-emulsify it if we need to, and then in a piping bag, cool it down to 29, and we'll pipe again. The mix is made. We don't, no, it just makes life more complicated if you've got to remember how much chocolate goes into that one. No, make your ganache, make your caramels, chill them. Got one in here? Yeah, I do. There's a zippy lock one, because I only had one. That one is caramel ganache, but that's done with that chocolate. You know that one, right? That's my favourite. Yeah, I'm not a chocolate snob. I like caramel gold. I also like the Valrhona Mangiare, but you know what? My favourite, my all-time favourite, for anybody that's caring to listen, my all-time favourite is Fleur de Cow, right? Fleur de Cow by Kookaburra. It's my all-time favourite. If I could only ever use one more chocolate for everything forever, and it was the only choice, it would be Fleur de Cow every single time. All right, I think it's a fabulous chocolate. That we just put in a Ziploc bag. It's got the chocolate, it's got everything in there. It's cold, so it's quite firm at the minute, but it will cool down. We'll just warm that back to 40, 45. If it needs re-emulsifying with a stick blender, we'll do that. At the point that I temper it is I take it down, I get it below 33. I'd add 1% of the chocolate weight, so I know how much chocolate's in there, because it's normally about 15%. So for every 100 grams, that's 15 grams, right? So I would do the 1.5 of silk, so 1.5 or 2% of silk, right? So we'd add that when it's at 33 in the bowl, and then I would put it in the piping bag, get it to 29, we pipe, right? So if it's got chocolate in, it's worth tempering. No, if it's got chocolate in, it's worth adding silk to make it tempered with pre-crystallized, so that it crystallizes more evenly and a little bit quicker when it's in the shell, right? Coffee station mode. Customers have got worse since COVID. I don't know if they're worse. I tell you what, people are a lot quicker to share their opinion on. Yeah, I have to word this carefully. People are a bit quicker in sharing their opinion on what they think that you should be doing, right? And I get hammered with this daily. It's like, you should do smaller starter packs. No, I don't want to do smaller ones than that, because where are we? That bottle and top costs less than that bottle and top. And if I went down to the next size down, that's more inexpensive than that one. So it wouldn't be cost effective. So if I went down to like a 70 gram bottle, it would probably need to be selling them not far off the price that I sell 140 grams. Does that make sense? The bottle gets smaller, the bottle gets more expensive. Crazy, right? And it's the same size label, the same size stickers, the same size everything. So the efficiency for us is 140 grams or 280 grams or 500 or 1 kilo, or the 2 kilo pails for the big producers that use that. But we make that to order, and the minimum is 10 kilos of each colour, right? But I think since COVID, yeah, I think people are just a bit quicker to share their opinion on what they think you should be doing. It's, everybody's an armchair expert. I'm like, it's kind of awkward. Guys getting negative, isn't it? I fully make mine in piping bags and place in the fridge. When I want to use it, I just warm it slightly and use. Absolutely. Caramel's good. Caramel will pipe at quite a room temperature, right? Caramel's very, very good. Gandusia's the same, right? it'll get down to 22, 23 degrees and it's still pipeable, it'll still have a flat layer. The only challenge we use in caramel at room temperature is caramels dome a lot. As, where's my man there? Ryan. Okay. If you pipe caramel, underfill them. You need to underfill caramel because they dome, all right? So you end up with a dome, all right? So when you go and cap, you either spread the cap with the caramel, which is not easy to recover, or if the chocolate's a little bit too warm, you get little blisters come up through the cap, which isn't particularly nice. But the only fix to that is acetate, or you just keep capping again, all right? So Cakes by Kristin. Cakes by Kristin. I reposted a picture the other day. That was her first cake that she sprayed using the cocoa butters. Really, really good. That was her first go. Absolutely amazing. But more and more cake makers are using the Ice Your Cocoa range. And we've seen a massive spike in sales of the Luster Dusts that specifically are going out to cake makers as well, right? So it's all good. It's all good. Clary's Chocolates. What else have we got? Dual Cocoa. I can only imagine all of the junk emails and messages you deal with, which makes me appreciate your gracious response to my colour shades issue. The emails, Rani and I sit down, actually it's just become a major chunk of our working day now, is just responding to questions that could be answered if people watch the channel, questions that could be answered if they went to the frequently asked questions on the website. We do find ourselves sat at the table with a laptop each going, I've answered the same email 10 times. And we're wondering, you know, if we put the information out there, we know it's out there, we know it's available, but it still doesn't get read. So they expect, you know, and if you don't answer within a day, you get this email that says, just bringing up this point again, are you going to answer me? And like, yeah, we'll get there. But this is business, right? This is business, and this is how it goes, and you got to not let it kind of get to you, right? How do you warm it in the microwave? Yeah, warm it, caramel, warm it in the microwave. It goes, if I was going to warm this one now, it will go in there and I'll warm it, okay? And then I'll empty it out and I'll put it in the bowl. When it's liquid enough, we'll scrape all of it out, because that's 1 kilo and 200 in there. It will go into that bowl. I'll warm it up. I'll make sure it's all nicely emulsified. We'll get it to 33 degrees. We'll add the 1.5% of silk, 2% of silk. We'll blend that in really quickly. I'll get it in a poking bag, lay it flat. As soon as that's below 29, I'll start piping. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Isn't that the... I left my cake here and I keep getting a lovely smell of it. That's all mine. It's all mine. It's not even for sharing. No, it's Candy Shops. Hello, sir. I'll be in touch with you very shortly. I did mention on the page the other day that I'll do another cocoa butter class. I'm just going to select the date. It's a little bit busy for me at the minute. I'm not going to lie, I've just been a little bit busy at the moment. But yeah, we're gonna run another cocoa butter class shortly. So can you please explain what silk is exactly? I'm still a beginner and I haven't got to silk yet. Silk is basically it's tempered cocoa butter, but it's over tempered, so it's got too many beta crystals in it. If I don't have any, I've got some to show you. You have a look. Let me have a look, because these are I was making so much today. This is silk. So that's an incubator. That one's set at 32.2. If I leave this in there for a period of time, okay, normally 24 hours, what I'll end up with is this, what looks like mayonnaise paste, right? That is over tempered cocoa butter. So that's cocoa butter with too many beta crystals in there. If I melt chocolate to 34 degrees, no, with silk, if I melt chocolate to 33, I'll melt it higher than that. I'll melt it over 34, just to make sure any beta crystals that are in there have melted and they have gone. Okay, all the other crystals melt at lower temperatures, so I just need to get it over 34. We'll then wait for it to get down to 33 for silk, and I'll add 1% of that into the chocolate. I'll stir like mad. If there's a big amount of chocolate, we'll use an immersion blender just to blend that in. And then once that chocolate on the cool down, once that reaches 32, we're shelling, we're pouring. So it's called Easy Temper, and for anybody that uses silk, I describe it as fire and forget. I know how to temper chocolate, and how to do it on a table. Back in the day, seeding, all the different ways of doing it, using micro, using silk block, whatever. This is the easiest thing. We're melting chocolate to 34. We're waiting for it to get to below 33.8. We're adding this 1% of over-tempered cocoa butter in there that's got lots of beta crystals. We're stirring that through the chocolate, and we're using it on the cool down. So once it reaches 32, we'll be ready to shell. Milk white, dark, ruby, caramel, doesn't really matter to me. They're all used at the same temperature. I will generally, I'll be honest, I use all of them at 32 degrees. 32.1, 32.2, 31.9, 31.8, doesn't really matter. Once the beta crystals, they're either in there or they're not. Okay, and this is the thing, this is what's so difficult, I think, for beginners. Beta crystals are made out to be this kind of strange thing. And some chefs have made it really scientific. If you can imagine, within that mass of chocolate, billions and billions of little strands, they are chains of beta crystals, okay? They are formed during the cool down. Once chocolate gets below 33.8, if we continue cooling it, the cocoa butter that's in the chocolate will form beta crystals, okay? If we cool it fast enough and quick enough, all right, and cold enough, it will form enough beta crystals. The damage is done on the warm-up, and I say this all the time. You can take a bowl of chocolate that's tempered and you can warm it up. Put it in the microwave, massive zap of electricity is probably going to instantly melt the majority of the beta crystals, if not 50%. The warm-up is where the damage is done. Beta crystals are not particularly temperature sensitive. The warm-up is where they get damaged. So I think what's equally more difficult is the temperature ranges, right? When we're seeding, and I'll explain this again because this is a good way. This is me getting my own back at the education industry, right? And I've watched educators try to teach chocolate tempering, and I just stood at the edge of the class like shaking my head going, these students have no idea what you're talking about. If I melt chocolate to 45 degrees, and then we will add a mass of cold chocolate that's tempered, right? So cold chocolate's going into the hot chocolate, and we will stir, right? And we stir and stir and stir, and we get told to add more calates in. That's cooling the chocolate down. Absolutely nothing is happening till we get below 33.8. Below 33.8, that's where beta crystals will form, because above 33.8, beta crystals don't survive the temperature. So they are very temperature sensitive, and they're very, very delicate. So we'll add the 45 degrees out of temper, no beta crystals in there. We'll add the seed to it, and we will stir. That chocolate that you've added in will cool it down. Nothing, absolutely nothing has happened till you get below 33.8, okay? So any of those bits of chocolate that are left in there at 33.8, that's what's adding the seed or the beta crystals into your chocolate, okay? Then we take it down to 27, and there'll be little chunks left. If there's little chunks left in there, fish them out if you need to. But this is where it gets a little bit awkward, because at the teaching places, they get you to stick a palette knife in and go, there's my tempered chocolate. And it's tempered. Then we go and warm this up, right? And if we warm this up too aggressively, we melt all the beta crystals. Then we pour it, because it's nice and fluid, and we make shells, and it doesn't work, because we melted all the beta crystals. And then they go, but there's my tempered chocolate. No, they ain't the same thing. At the moment that you warmed that up, that wasn't tempered anymore. So the warm up, just very, very delicately. I absolute dislike of heat guns, right? Too hot, way too hot. Same as microwaves. A 3-second blast can take a 3-second blast can take your chocolate from 31 to 34, right? Especially if you've got like a big 1200 watt microwave. So it's gentle heat on that warm up. We're trying to preserve those beta crystals. They're either in there or they're not. So they're either in there because you put them in with silk, in which case we're using it on the cool down. We don't need to warm it up, we're using it on the cool down. So you either put them in there or you created them, and if you created them you probably took them to too low a temperature at 27, and then you've got to warm it up. If you do need to warm chocolate up and preserve the beta crystals, you need to do it very, 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 very gently. Simples, right? 33.8. 33.8 is where beta crystals melt and have gone. If we look at tempered melted chocolate under a microscope, if we look at it at 33 degrees, lots of beta crystals. 33.4, lots of beta crystals. 33.6, 33.7, we will start seeing some stragglers that have melted off, okay? 33.8, none whatsoever anywhere, right? So nothing's happening with seeding until you get below 33.8, right? Dragées with luster dust is something very special. Oh yes. Is there a faster way of making enrobed chocolates other than using an automatic tempering machine? It's an enrobing belt and it's the funnel and the pour and all the bits and pieces. No, there isn't a faster way of doing it at all. Should bonbons be stored in the fridge? You can store them in the fridge, not a problem at all. I store mine in the fridge. I will store mine at 12 degrees. I don't want them much cooler than that because it's just too much going in and out of the cold to the warm room temperature. But nothing wrong with storing bonbons in the fridge. The problem is you get ganache will dehydrate over the period of time, right? Caramels don't dehydrate. Gandujas and pralines, they don't dehydrate, but ganaches and pâte de fruits, not so much pâte de fruits, they don't dehydrate, but well, they do a little bit. Fluid gels will dehydrate, so if they're in the fridge for too long, too cold temperature, ganaches eventually end up with a little cat bell where you've got the shell, but when you shake it, you can hear the chocolate ganache inside rattling. That'd be the only reason to not put them in a really, really cold. I think when you serve them and you sell them, they just need to be at room temperature, because like anything that's high in fat, if it's too cold, the tongue doesn't perceive all the flavour notes in it. So there's tannins and different things going on in chocolate. You're not going to get those full flavours if they're too cold, but you need them cold enough so that will preserve some of the shelf life, right? What are your quickest setting fillings? Gandujas and pralines with silk. What else? I'm going to do a Galantines event where the folks will fill pre-made shells, and then I'll go and cap quickly afterwards. Do you know what I would do? I wouldn't do ganaches, I wouldn't do caramels because they take too long. I would go with Ganduja. I wouldn't even do praline, right? Because it's sugar in it. If you make a nut paste, and do it 15% nut paste, 50% chocolate, get that down to 33 and add some silk, because I know you've got an easy temper, Kelly, because I know you knocked the blue button off, didn't you? We've all done it. I do that because I think the interesting thing, if you do caramels and they overfill them, it domes. Capping's a nightmare. And if you've got to cap their work and they haven't filled them nicely, you're going to get blamed. I think the nice things about Gandujas is you can get them very fluid, and if you get the silk in there, you can just pop them in the fridge for 2-3 minutes, just to give them a bit of cold shock, and they will be level. Okay, and then you'll be able to cap them really, really easily, and the filling will remain quite soft as well, right? So I do that, but yeah, without a doubt, Gandujas. I wouldn't do praline. Gandujas all the way, right? Big punchy flavors as well, isn't it? Right? It's not being thinned down. It's not being thinned down with sugar. So silk is the 8th miracle. It's clever. Days are a game changer, right? I mean, if people have got money, people have got pennies spare. If I was I did a post about this and said if I was going to start again from the beginning, that would be a priority purchase. Not the dehydrator. I can get away with a smaller compressor to begin with. I don't even need melting tanks. I can, give me a microwave, silk, easy temper, a microwave, and a couple of bowls and some mould. I can hand paint until I've sold some product to generate some money to buy a better compressor. But I think that's a priority purchase because it's good for the shelling. It's good for the fillings. It's just all round good. It's just clever. You can use it for the cocoa butter. It's clever. Happy I got a Thermopen dehydrate for my birthday now, 0.8 needle. Happy days. Every day's a win. Which temperature is better to add micro? I would add micro at 34. Add micro at 34. Let me grab my tub. This one's nearly empty. So I do teaching. Not for food use, teaching aid only. Do not keep this in the fridge, okay? If you've got this, don't put this in the fridge because it gets too cold, all right? So that when you put it into the chocolate, if it's too cold, you'll find that those tiny little microscopic pieces, they won't melt into the chocolate. So ideally, you want your chocolate at 34 degrees. Don't do it any higher than that because what we're trying to do is get below 33.8, and the micro that we're adding are minute, tiny little flecks of cocoa butter, right? That's in temper, so they're basically pure beta crystals, right? 34 degrees. Sprinkle that in through a sieve, and then stir it through. And you need to stir and leave it to melt, and then stir it through. So just don't have it above 34 degrees. If you add micro in above 34 degrees, it's likely you're going to melt all the beta crystals before they've had chance to get around that mix of chocolate, right? So then you'll go to shell and it won't work. So 34 degrees, 33.8 is where they melt. So 34 would be my absolute ceiling. If I was going to be super duper accurate, I'd get my chocolate to 33.8, but that's a challenge because it could be 33.8 in one bit and 33.9 in another and 34 in another, and so generally 34 degrees, right? No warmer, okay? No warmer, otherwise you're going to melt the beta crystals, and we know how sensitive those are because I just talked about that. James, I put silk in a mould to crystallise and then grate it in chocolate for tempering. Some people say this cube is normal cocoa butter now. There is no difference between this cube and normal cocoa butter. No, it's the same thing. Same thing. If you're making silk, the difference with tempering, if I took cocoa butter and I cooled it down, I wouldn't have absolute max. What I'd need to get the maximum amount of beta crystals in there is I'd take the cocoa butter, sit it over cold water, and I'd keep stirring until it's absolutely solidified, okay, over cold water. That will give me a block that I could then grate, okay. Silk is formed by cocoa butter holding at a stable temperature for a long period of time, normally about 24 hours, and each little one links to another. They're polymorph, they're long chains, right? But each one adds to another, if you just quickly kind of temper cocoa butter and take it down to kind of 26, 27, you're probably not going to have enough beta crystals in there that would then seed chocolate, if that makes sense. If you add silk to a very fluid milk chocolate, do you still shell it around 31.5? I find my milk chocolate just pours out the mould at that temperature, and having to shell at 29. Yeah, and do you know what? I would always shell at 32. If I've got a very fluid chocolate, 31.5 would be good. If I've got painted moulds, and what's confused the world, every night I sit here, I pull all the stuff out, and when we finish, I've got all of it to put away again. What's confused everybody is this chart here, right? So it says, and this is for seeding. This is kind of old technology, right? So this is equivalent of having a cassette player in your car, right? Or a CD player, because nobody buys them anymore, do they? 45 degrees, take it down to 27, warm it back up. It'd be really handy if that said time, but it doesn't. It's just got some temperatures. With silk, we're using it in the opposite direction. So we're taking it to 33 and using it on cool down. If I've got a chocolate that's very, very fluid, what I do need to take into account is the cocoa butter layer. When those charts came out, we weren't painting moulds like this. So that doesn't take into account an additional layer of chocolate, of cocoa butter. So if I've got a layer of cocoa and I've painted in there, if I shell below 31 degrees, there's not quite enough temperature in there to melt that layer of cocoa butter, so that when they both dry, okay, and they both crystallize and they both retract or shrink, okay, the shell's going to shrink, the chocolate's going to shrink away, but if you haven't fully melted that layer of cocoa butter, you're going to be left with big chunks that are still stuck in the mold. The challenge with shelling with a very fluid chocolate is you need that temperature up. So to get the chocolate thicker, for like a 4-drop chocolate, 5-drop chocolate, to get a thicker layer, what you would do is still pour at 33, 31 and a half, I think you said, Emma. I'd leave it in the mold longer, okay? I'd leave it in the mold long, because you're not trying to change the fluidity, you're trying to get the warmth in that mold. I'd still do it at 31, 31 and a half. I'd leave it in the mold longer before I tap it out. If you shell at 29, there's a real danger that you're going to leave, there's just not enough temperature to melt that layer of cocoa butter. Does that make sense, Emma? I mean, send me a message separately on that one, and I'll give you some temperature variations. I think certainly with all my experience of doing this, and then with the teaching, I did a class recently where we just shelled a little bit late, and we're left with big chunks that were left in the mold. And when we shelled, I knew that was going to happen because we weren't working fast enough, and I knew the chocolate had come down, and I think the chocolate was around about 30. So the shell was a little bit thicker. I could tell by the edges on it, and when we shelled it, I thought, I know exactly what's going to happen here. And when we tapped them out, we had big chunks of chocolate still left in the mold, and all that is the chocolate was too cool because of the layer of cocoa butter. And the reason I knew that is these weren't all airbrushed molds. Some of them we'd painted with sponges, so the layer of cocoa butter was thicker. Because the layer of cocoa butter is thicker, I now need a slightly warmer temperature of chocolate to make sure we melt that layer. Does that make sense? It's all kind of logical. It's all logical. The chart on this is for seeding, right? And it's to do with enrobing as well. It's not particularly helpful when you take into account an additional layer in the mold, okay? Because it says here to warm to 31 use between 28 to 29. That's if you're enrobing, so dipping, okay? And then 31 and a half if you were 31 and a half if you were shelling and what they would call casting, all right? It'd be interesting to see whether, and I have canvassed quite a few chocolate brands to say on the packaging you now need to start talking about silk and micro, right? Because the chart's old-fashioned and it's a little bit confusing, right? You imagine on the roadside if it said, you know, instead of saying miles per hour, it said knots. To be like, I don't know what 45 knots is, right? Because I don't. So, and it's kind of old technology, right? Just starting out and had a chat with a local EHO. Shelf life is a grey area, he said. Do you have any guidance anywhere? Yeah, you want recipes that have got a suggested AW. You know, there is industry best practice as well, right? So shelf life will relate to how much available water's in there. Ganaches, lots of water, because we're using a fresh cream. So your local EHO should give you some guidance, and it changes area to area because there's not a set law on how long you can let your chocolates go. It'll relate to your local EHO, certainly in the UK. Some want you to send stuff off for testing, others are happy. You know, I do lots of caramel. I don't do much ganache, don't do lots of ganache, just because I know how limited it is. And whilst I do know how to extend that shelf life massively, right? What I do find is that I get to extend the shelf life of ganache and end up dropping the flavour. Well, I don't. I want maximum flavour. I don't really want to go have a chocolate that can last 6 months. It's not going to taste great. I'd rather say eat these within 4 weeks. They're absolutely amazing. After that, come and buy some more, or wait 4 weeks and come and buy the next batch. Right. So industry standard, industry best practice. Find some books that have got EHOs. Buy recipes that have got shelf life, suggested shelf life on them, that have been tested or been categorized, and use those, because that will make up your evidence to show an EHO that, look, I've made this caramel, I've cooked it to 106, 107, there's no water content left in it, therefore shelf life is stable, right? How long would you give it? Industry standard for a caramel is 3 months, right? If you want to claim more, you'd have to kind of do shelf life testing or send it off for lab testing, right? With silk or with micro, if it's got chocolate in, I'll use silk or I'll use micro, and the amount that I put in is based on how much chocolate's in there, right? Not how much nut paste in there, how much chocolate's in there. Generally, gandusias, pralines, I'll do 2%, right? James, what's the difference between micro that you show and crystallized silk that I grate into the chocolate? No different at all. No different at all, same thing. If I leave the lid off this, if I put some of this, I did this the other week. That's silk. If I leave the lid off that for a minute, that will crust over, okay? If I get a little bit of this, and I'm going to spread some down there, right? We'll come back to that. That's there, look. A little. So, I'll get rid of that because it's been on the table. We'll leave that for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and that will crystallise. That will crystallise. If I leave the lid off that for 20 minutes, I'll put that into a mould, it will set solid, and then I'll grate it, which is exactly what that is. The slight difference is they will spray that. They spray that over a curtain of carbon dioxide, so the mist creates the tiny little droplets, which is what that is, but it's no different to really how you would grate it. It's still an application. That's already dry on there, okay? And this is how aggressive it is. Way. That's how quickly it fluffed up, okay? So I don't know how long that was on there, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, okay? It's like, think of it as like the setting agent in concrete, right? Once this goes through the chocolate and it cools down, it crystallizes, and it crystallizes very, very quickly, okay? That's all that silk is. It just means that I can melt chocolate to 33, I can add the silk to it in a liquid form or in a paste form, okay? If I don't have silk, then I can use micro, which is pretty much the same thing. I just got to stir it through and a slightly warmer temperature. If all those tiny little flakes don't melt, I can put a hairdryer on it and just assist it with a little bit more warmth, not heat, warmth, okay? Once it's all melted through, we'll wait for it to get to 32 and we'll shell, right? All my production is done by a cassette player. Maybe birthday will bring enough for an easy temper. Can you buy cassette players anymore? I don't know, can you? James, what's your opinion on using a pH meter as opposed to an AW? Apparently the meters are a lot cheaper. So a pH meter tests for acidity. pH is potential hydrogen, right? So the pH meter will test acidity and alkaline. That will just tell you the acidity or the alkaline of the product. It won't give you a shelf life test. We know that as the pH goes up 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, we know we get some shelf life from acidity, because there are things that won't, psychophiles, different bacterias and different mold, different funguses that won't survive in a highly acidic area. However, it's unlikely that that level of acidity would be found in a chocolate filling. So a pH meter we would use for making pâte de fruits, just to make sure we got the right acidity in the fruits. But it doesn't give you, I mean, the other is a saccharometer, which will give you temperature and it'll tell you how much sugar, syrup is in there. So Brix bar meters, they're all very different things. pH meter will won't give you a shelf life, it'll just give you an acidity or alkaline. So that's potential hydrogen. AW is the available water. So once everything is bound up, there will be a small percentage of free water that's floating around. That's the available water. The available water, it's scored in 0.1000, so you'll get a score of 0.85, which is generally speaking about 21 to 28 days, right? James, what's the difference between micro powder that you show and hardened set? I've already answered that. Right, it's lots of people leaving. It's that time already. Right, I'm going to get going because I've got to go and clean up. Play this back, think about the airbrush. We're fully stocked up now. I'm going to do... Probably going to do cocoa butter class in the next couple of weeks, so just watch out for the posts on that. What else do I need to say? Be nice to everybody. It's New Year. Everybody should be really nice and happy to everybody. So have a nice weekend. I will see you next week. It'll be over in a flash. It'll only seem like a couple of days. I'm going to go and eat my cake because Mo said that's my cake. So we're going to go and argue over that now. I'll post what's happening with the cocoa butter class. But everybody have a lovely week. Thank you for joining tonight. I hope you found it helpful. That's it. Have a good one. Bye-bye.